This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Pallid, the internet's busiest horror story critic. Today we're going to be taking a look at the God Theory. This is posted to the Creepypasta Wikia, fandom thing, because, now it wants to be known as fandom, even though it was Wikia for years, and it's frustrating. But we're going to be reading this. We're going to get right into it and see what it has on offer. There are many theories to explain the great unknown. Some people turn to science, others religion, and of course, there are those that just shove both aside and say that life as we know it is just happened through his theory turns back to science in the end. See Darwinism. That's a weird way to start this off. Many different countries and races have had religion for as long as there have been recorded history. It's weird to say, race and religion in the same sentence because, races and religions aren't tied together. And in the more recent times, intercontinental travel, there have been reports of black holes, places where boats and planes just disappear off the face of the earth, most famous being the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, this so far really seems like a series of disconnected ideas. Some people believe in science, some people believe in religion, some people shove both aside, some people are Darwinists, some people like black holes. I'm not sure. This is a weird way to start this off, is what I'm saying. No one knows why these places exist or even how they exist, but there is one theory spoken in little more than whispers due to its controversial subject matter. This is referred to by some as the God Theory. Alright, so there's the title drop. I would prefer it if it said, this is referred to by some as the Flat Earth Theory. History of the God Theory. It is said that during the reign of Henry VIII, three high-standing bishops, this was before the creation of the Church of England, were called into a private meeting. No one knows what was said during this meeting, with only the four men in the room. However, after the meeting concluded, the bishops were quickly taken aboard a mysterious ship and never seen again. According to one of the bishop's diaries found in the late 1890s during the restoration of one of Henry's manors, the king had been acting peculiarly in the months leading up to when they were called into council the king. He had been rambling in mass, talking about how God was man-made and how he would make a far better God than any that the Romans and Hebrews had made. The bishop, who also practiced in medicine, took it as insanity setting in and ordered that the Henry be bled to allow the demons causing his insanity to escape. So far, we had the beginning, which was just under the heading of the God Theory, and then we have the history of the God Theory, which is, the third paragraph. I feel this would be better if it just started at the third paragraph, just get right to the meat of it, because this is where we're actually getting information that's interesting, pseudo-historical, fun. There's an actual disappearance. It seems that everything is tied together more here than the ramblings at the beginning that I don't think serve much of a purpose. After the bleeding, the king several times a month, the king's rambling stopped and the bishop declared Henry sane. It was only a month later that the three bishops disappeared. So they were bleeding him once a month, as you do. More common for queens than kings, but regardless, I like that they're, using methods of medicine that were common at the time. Just got to get them demons out. There are many different theories as to what happened to these bishops. One was that Henry sent them to a harsh and savage land as a form of exile from the British Isles, and as punishment for speaking out against the head of state. Another is that the bishops were simply going back to Rome and assumed similar roles in the Vatican. Then, of course, there is the God Theory. So both of these have ended in the phrase, something as the God Theory, both of these headings. We're getting into the third heading. In the beginning, is this one, which is weird that this is the third heading, and it says in the beginning. In the beginning was kind of the first part of the Bible, but let's press on. The God theory states that the ship the bishops boarded was a prisoner ship, a floating prison where convicts were forced to languish on the open sea as punishment for whatever crimes, imagined or real, the passengers may or may not have committed. All right, that's a pretty interesting premise. I wonder if that has any basis in historical fact. It really doesn't matter as long as it's passing itself off as historical fact. And I think it is right now. I don't need to dig into it to see if it is. This part so far has been written in a way that is evocative of a history book, or kind of like pop history, if you know what I mean. History being conveyed in an interesting, relatable way. It has that kind of conversational tone to it, like, hey kids, let me rap to you about history and bloodletting. On the ship, there were 6 convicts, 3 men and 3 women. Among the crew itself, there were a handful of sailors, 2 guards, the captain, and the bishops. The first stop was, in fact, Rome. While the ship waited in the dock, the 3 bishops were taken to the Vatican, and there they were ushered into a meeting with Pope Leo X, who is my favorite rapper, Pope Leo X. This meeting was documented, although the scroll that it was documented on is close to destroyed. What can be read from the scroll, however, could change the way people look at religion forever. It was actually the discussion of the selfish gene and the theory of evolution long before Darwin. That's what it is. I do like this. I would ask for some sources, some sort of like, so we're getting this document. That's a nice bit. And that is grounding us. That is a little bit of evidence to these ideas. I would like a little bit more on the former part. Just a little bit more evidence up front, citing your sources, citing your receipts. But overall, I think that this is a pretty strong idea. What remains of the scroll says, Sit autem tres veris isti in demolis nem equad tirbis isulis es efferuted Dominant Doom. Oh my god, guys, it continues. I'm not going to say the rest of that. This translates to, let these 3 men travel 3 desolate islands and attempt to disprove our Lord God. All evidence of this test is to be documented and saved so that the future generations will not fail to know the power of the Almighty. So what I'm getting here is that these 3 bishops began to doubt the idea of God, or maybe this king believed himself to be a god and the bishops were calling it heresy and they were punished for this, for having him bloodlet. This is when the 3 bishops go back to the ship and are never seen again, because they can't disprove that God exists, because he does. He still lives. He is risen and he's within me. Everything from here on is based purely on speculation, although with such conditions it would not surprise me if they are in fact true. You know what? I really did not like the beginning of this, but I'm really starting to get into it. I'm feeling what the story is laying down. We're on to a new heading, Genesis 1:27 to 31, aka the 6th day of creation. It is believed that the bishops were dropped off to 3 different islands, each one male, with 1 male and 1 female prisoner. Maybe it's just me, but it's a little unclear whether the bishops are the male, or if there's a bishop and then a male and a female, and then the bishop is going to learn how sex works. These islands were tropical in atmosphere and devoid of human life. It is hypothesized that each bishop on his own island then hypnotized their prisoners, effectively erasing their memory of any previous life. The bishops would then name the male Adam and the female Eve. The rest, as they say, is history. Boning. Some hypothesize that Adam and Eve were hypnotized, that the hypnosis caused them to only hear the bishop. time would go on as usual, and left with no means to leave the island, a civilization was born. Okay, so presuming that these islands are have things like fruit and vegetables and whatnot, and hopefully wildlife of some kind that they are able to eat and live. The idea that these bishops are hypnotizing them is coming out of left field to me. I'm not sure whether these bishops are being punished, who the good guy is, who the bad guy is, or let me rephrase that, who the antagonist is, protagonist. I'm just a little iffy on as to what's going on. Due to the hypnosis, it is theorized that when each pair of Adam and Eve's had their children, the children could at first see the bishop as well as hear him. But after constant insistence by their parents and constant ignorance from the bishops, any children born would no longer see him, just hear him if he chooses to speak as God. Time passed, and obviously the bishops would die. They, of course, were only human. Whenever the new race of humans were able to see his body when he was dead, whether the new race of humans would be able to see it. New race of humans? That's a weird thing to say though, because they're not really a new race. They're still just humans. But it is theorized that as time went by, that the prisoners, or Adams and Eves, became things of myth, or even worship as the forebearers of the human race. What? I'm a little confused about this. This is getting weird and murky. I was kind of liking where it was going with the mystery. And now I was kind of like on that cliffhanger where they're saying, the rest of this is speculation, although, there's some sort of like proof, like it's kind of, you should believe this. It's totally real, guys. This isn't doing that for me. That was a pretty big promise, and it's not being cashed as I would like. As it was said in the stories were written in songs, some would also have supposedly conversed with their God, and thus a religion was born. For thine is the kingdom of heaven, and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen, is the header of this one. Of course, no one has heard from these people, and if they have met them, they would not return from their encounters, and this is where the theory of the triangle comes from. Think of those stories you hear of alien encounters. They tend to fly strange airships, or, in some instances, some from the water itself, correct? What if, for example, when those people were left to fend for themselves on these islands, they didn't, for example, evolve? In some ways, they were still human, but had certain characteristics changing them, which would transform them into new forms of the human race. This is a bit of a stretch. You can affect, human anatomy through diet and situations. We are affected by nurture, not just nature, sure, but it's stretching it. The idea that they would maybe like turn into primitive aliens with spaceships, I'm not sure what we're getting at here. I think that they're trying to imply that there are like 3 islands out there that form the Bermuda Triangle that have these Adam and Eve races on it. It's a little weird. And if they were to see a civilized human, imagine what they would think. Time travelers, perhaps? Alien or demonic being? Most likely. Now, maybe when these people saw the race set up by Henry VIII, they chose to join them. And why not? They were most likely a peaceful, relaxed race. Or maybe when the natives saw the civilized people and equipment, they attacked. Seeing this civilized race as a threat. Some people can travel through these triangles unharmed, coming clean through them. Others disappear forever. And of course, there are some reports of islands being seen in the distance, usually uncharted, yet they never do get charted. Sure. Conclusion, maybe keep that in mind, including a brief mention of alien encounters. Is it possible that the world's religions were created by a superior alien race? Keep in mind, in the Bible, it says that God was made us in his image. Well, why not? Don't give it too much thought on my account, though. After all, it's only a theory. It's just a theory. Game theory. So, mixed bag of a story, I would say. Overall, But the parts of it I really did like. I like the idea of exploring this idea of ancient aliens and that kind of thing. That is good. The idea that aliens are a superior race that created us. That's a pretty popular idea nowadays, not in terms of people actually believing it, but people thinking about it. I like thinking about it. It's fun, even though it's really dumb and makes no sense. It's really fun to think about it. It's like the Great Moon Dragon conspiracy theory. I don't believe it, but I like to believe it. And so I did enjoy parts of this story. I feel that it could really use a second draft, in my opinion. I don't know or care what the author thinks, but that's just my opinion. We get some comments here from Mr. Boogeyman. Brilliant. Sure. I would disagree with going that far, but it's pretty good. We have this comment by Enrico. 9 out of 10 was really quite interesting. It makes as much sense as most God theories, of course. There are numerous of them. It's kind of a strange title. I still understand what you're aiming at. I understand what he was aiming at too. It is a decent exploration at points of the idea of religion. At other points, I just wasn't feeling it. I feel that it could be a little more consistent, a little more evidence thrown in. And I don't understand where we're getting all of the circumstantial evidence, like, under the conditions, I think it's probably true, even if it's speculation. Okay, speculation based on what evidence, though? Like, we don't need a full explanation, but we need a little bit of evidence to speculate on. You can't speculate on something when there's no evidence. That's the whole point of speculation, is take evidence and extrapolate on it, even if you can't prove it. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the God theory down and below. And do check out the Fear Fiction Podcast, where myself, Abysme, and Slime Beast read short horror stories and critique them and mess around while we do it. Let's get on to our sponsor of the day, which is AdamandEve.com. AdamandEve.com, where boomers go to buy their sex toys.